Hey guys, and welcome back. My name is Mel, and can you believe it? This is the last SPFBO blog. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off is an indie competition hosted by Mark Lawrence, done every year, where they narrow down 300 applicants down to 10 and find the best self-published fantasy novel. And this year, Cassidy decided to get a bunch of us together, and we kind of did our own little on the side, unofficial Cassidy's version SPFBO review, just to see what things would look like if we had more of a rubric and did things our way. So I was asked to participate, and it's been so much fun reading these. I will link down below my previous SPFBO vlogs if there is a book that you wanted to hear more of my thoughts about but wasn't included in this vlog. This vlog is going to go over the last 5 novels, and I cannot believe that we're to the end. Like, that's absolutely insane. So let me tell you about the ones that I'm going to be reading in this vlog. The first is The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. This one is one that I'm really excited about. I'm kind of terrified because Rachel didn't absolutely love it, but then Cassidy did. It's huge, but it sounds like it's going to be right up my alley. So I'm really excited to read this one. This is a progression fantasy about people that can become sharded, basically when the world, and it exploded into different shards, but if you are one of the chosen, you can take those shards, embed them into your body, and get powers, and essentially continue to level up. She said there was really cool world building, a really cool magic system in this, so I'm super excited to read it. And then I'm also going to be reading Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. Wow, that's a mouthful. By Quimby Olson. This is a Regency story about Miss Percy, who inherits a dragon, and she doesn't realize that it's a dragon until it hatches, and now she's got to figure out what to do with it and how to care for it. I've heard that this one's kind of quirky, but also a little bit more dull, so I'm hoping that I enjoy it. I will be listening to the audiobook for this one, and I'm thinking that hopefully the narrator will do a really good job bringing this story to life, so I'm excited to get to it. Then I will be reading Fire of the Forebears by L.A. Buck. This is a more classic fantasy, and it is about part of the world believes that humans are able to wield magic. They're called the Fidelies, and not all of Avalon believes that, Kira being one of them. And then we also follow Tristan, who is the prince to a kingdom, and his mother was killed by Fidelies, or so they say. There's a magical sword in this. There is budding friendships and centaurs and talking animals, so I'm curious to see if I end up enjoying it. Classic fantasy is not usually my thing, but I'm hopeful, fingers crossed. Again, this one is quite long, but the print is big, so I think I will fly through it. It is also, I believe, young adult. Then we have Tethered Spirits, which is also young adult, and this one is by T.A. Hernandez. It is following 3 different characters, I believe. Kasari, and she is a Tarja, which I believe is somebody that is bonded to a spirit that can do magic. We also have Amar, and he is cursed and he can't die. And then Alita, who is following behind these two to try to figure out more about Amar's curse in order to save her brother. I've heard that this one is really fast-paced, entertaining, and there's a sequel coming out in the not too distant future, so I'm hoping that I enjoy this one. And then last but not least is one that I don't currently own a copy of, and that is Mysterious Ways by Abby Evans. This is about a commander of the Queen's Watch or something like that has always been able to solve the mysteries and do the goddess's will, but then when she finds out that innocent people aren't always innocent and guilty people aren't always guilty, sets out to discover the ultimate mystery. It's set in a world where we have angels and demons, and there is an underworld. It's short. I think it's going to be at least entertaining. Fingers crossed for all of these books that I end up loving them. So I guess let's get into the vlog.
Hey, also, I just wanted to give you a quick Miss Percy's update. I did not expect to love this book, and it is exactly what I expected. It is very Regency. It is very discussions of who's going to marry whom and what etiquette is and all of this type of stuff, which is just not my thing. And unfortunately, we have had 2 books in SPFBO that have been Regency based, so I'm not enjoying my time. I was hopeful that this would be a bigger, like, a dragon story than the Scales and Sensibilities was, but so far we have had a dragon. But I'm like 3 hours into the audiobook, and the dragon is a very, very small portion of the story so far. It's more about Miss Percy and how she's 40 years old and she doesn't want to get married or have kids, but everyone expects her to get married and have kids. And it's just a discussion that I'm very bored of because there's nothing new coming to that table. That is just exactly what you would expect from this type of story. And I was hoping for a fresher take, and unfortunately that's not what I'm getting. So I'm very, very bored. I do not care about the discussions that we're having, and I get that that is a me thing because a lot of people love this type of setting and this type of story, so I'm fully aware that that is a me problem, not a book problem. The book is actually really well written. I don't find that it's hard to listen to or that it's choppy or anything like that. It is well written and it is exactly what it set out to do. So I can't fault the book for being something that I don't enjoy, but I don't enjoy it. So I'm going to continue, hope that the dragon becomes a bigger thing, hope that it takes a little bit of a different turn and we get some fresh and new and exciting take, but I will keep you updated and let you know.
While I'm in here filming and everything's all nice and set up and pretty and we've got tripods and lighting, I figured I would go ahead and do an SPFBO update. So we need to talk about two different books. The first is Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. This is a progression fantasy series, well, progression fantasy book that is the first in a series. It is a very unique, very expansive world following a young man who is an indentured servant, and he is in this particular camp, and then one day a guy comes and he is one of the sharded few and kind of takes over this camp and tells him that he is one of the imbued. That's a very simple explanation for the story so far, but I just feel like anything more than that gives too much away because this book is very heavy-handed on the world building. So I'm about 40-ish%, we'll say somewhere around there. And I'm enjoying it so far. I don't know, it's kind of sitting at like a high 3-star at the current moment. I'm having a little bit of problems with the writing. The actual writing part of the story, completely fine. I'm enjoying that. The dialogue part of the story is where I'm struggling. It feels a little bit stilted and a little bit unnatural. Like these are conversations that the characters would not actually be having, and if they were, wouldn't be having in this way. A lot of the world building, we do have some that's done in dialogue, some that's not, so I can overlook the parts that are done in dialogue because sometimes you just have to do that, but I do appreciate that we're also seeing the world as well. So I'm having a good time so far. Right now he is in kind of the like magic school setting. We've kind of had our characters split off from one another a little bit and go into their respective roles. So I'm curious. I want to know what is going to happen. I know that Cassidy said it's a very good world, but it's trying to do a lot kind of world, and I can see that. We're 200 and something pages in, and I do feel like it's already a little bit on the long side, but I'm still having a good time, so I'm excited to keep reading this one. And then we also need to talk about Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quinby Olson. I think I've already told you guys what this one is about and kind of my initial thoughts, but I have now finished this, and my initial thoughts really haven't changed that much. I found this book to be quite boring. I don't do Regency. I don't love that the romance in here, or the focus of this book, starts out with a woman who doesn't need a man and she's fine with not being married. She's fine with being her own person. I do like that she learned to kind of start to stand up for herself, but I don't love that we still had kind of a relationship type focus. I wanted them to just be really good friends. But that is neither here nor there. We did start to get more of the dragon, which I did really enjoy. I absolutely love this cover, and I think that this is a book that I could have enjoyed if it had not been Regency. I just don't like that time period, that setting, the focus, and the, oh, well, you need to have good manners and you need to be married, and what do appearances think, and yada, yada, yada. It's just, I don't care. It's not for me. The plot of this does meander quite a lot. Nothing really happens until more the end of the story, and then by that point, it just wasn't really doing it for me. But I do think that it was well written, aside from some of the just over-the-topness of it, which was intentional to the Regency part of the story. It wasn't poorly written. So for this one, I think I'm going to give the characters a 6.5. I did like the characters, and I felt like Miss Percy was pretty well fleshed out, but the rest of them just kind of felt like they were there. They were just there to service Miss Percy and Fitz, not really there to play any major role in the story. So 6.5 on the characters. I'm going to give the plot also a 6.5. There was plot, so I'm not going to just like completely demolish it, but it was very backseat until the last little bit of the story, and I just wasn't super engaged by it. I'm gonna give the world building a 7. I did definitely feel the Regency setting. I do wish that they had delved a little bit more into the magical creatures aspect of things and where these came from and what other magical creatures they were. And it's supposed to be her pocket guide to the care and feeding of British dragons, but other than kind of getting that in the heading before chapters, you really don't see much of that. I expected her to be like this expert on the care and feeding of dragons, but she really wasn't. So I think the plot's gonna get a 7. Writing, I'm gonna give an 8. I did think it was well written. Like I said, I had a few minor complaints in the writing, but nothing just too severe. And then for enjoyment, I'm gonna give it a 4. I was just ready for it to be over by the time I finished it, and it was okay. Like, I could probably bump that up to a 5 maybe, because it was just very middle of the road for me. I didn't absolutely hate it, but I certainly was not overly entertained by it either. I was mostly just like, when's this gonna be done? The audiobook was great. I do highly recommend the audiobook. I think that that was very well done. And this is for a particular person. If you like cozy fantasy, you like a lot of character-driven story, you'd like a character-driven story, and you like Regency, then this could really work for you. Unfortunately, that person's not me. So those are my updates at the current moment. I am going to finish Umbral Storm, and then I'm not sure what I am going to read next. Probably going to read Mysterious Ways. I want that one done. And then that way all I have left is Fires of the Forebears and Tethered Spirits. But we're coming down to the wire, y'all. We're coming to the end, and we've got essentially 2 months, but April's Realmathon, so I don't want to be reading SPFBO and Realmathon. Anyway, I need to stop talking so that I can go back to reading, and I will catch you guys later. Hello everybody, so I just wanted to update you guys really quick because I have finished The Umbral Storm by Alec Hudson. I ended up really enjoying this. I had a good, fun time with it. I think that it does have its problems, but overall, I was just along for the ride and had an awesome time. I gave the characters a 7. I think that for the most part, the characters could have been improved, but there were a lot of really great things to these characters. The main one that I loved was the princess. She was actually a side character, but once she was introduced, I felt like she had the most personality and the most depth to her and her character as far as like backstory and stuff was concerned and motives. A lot of the side characters in general, I just thought were really well done, and I wanted to know more about them and was intrigued. Talking about our main characters, the female lead, I did not love. I felt like she was really only there to serve the purpose of getting the princess to the forefront. She didn't really have a lot of her own drive and emotions. We didn't get a whole ton of her backstory. She just kind of showed up and then existed for most of the book. Heath is kind of cardboard. Again, Heath, I don't really feel like had a ton of depth to himself either. We do see a little bit in the very beginning, but then as the book goes on, he clearly falls into the back, and I just didn't love his character. I just wanted more from his character. Darren, I liked, but he is a very specific archetype. Think the Rand archetype in Wheel of Time, where he is this young boy that is going to set off an adventure and is going to become one of the strong ones, you know, that kind of thing. It was very clear that that was what his character was supposed to be, but I had fun in his points of view. I think that they helped to expand the world a lot more, and I enjoyed it. The plot, I'm gonna give a 7 just because I feel like there was not a whole heck of a lot of like huge overarching plot again until the end of this book. The beginning and middle were very much so more focused on getting the world built and the magic system built. We ended up at a type of magical school about a third of the way into this book that I really, really enjoyed. And a lot of our time is spent there learning about what shards are, how you get shards, what the sharded few do, what their powers are, and some of the politics and things that are going on in this world. I really enjoyed that, but the big, I think, going to be the plot for the series doesn't come in until the last like 100 pages or so, which again, was fine. I enjoyed the little tidbits that we were getting before that, but it probably could have started coming in just a little bit earlier and I would have been happier. The world building, I'm gonna give an 8. I think it did a really solid job with the world building. Now, hear me out. It's doing a lot. It is trying to throw a lot of things at you. We've got giant crabs, and we've got huge dragon-like worms, and we've got shards, and we've got all of these magical powers, and we have different clans, and there's a lot going on. We have little shadow men, and I thought that it was well done without being too overwhelming for me. but I can see how some people would find this to be a little bit jarring of world building. Like he was trying to just throw a bunch of stuff at you and you just never really saw like a huge connection behind everything. Because I will say that like the crabs and the worm, I want to know how those are going to be relevant, because I feel like right now it was just this cool addition, but it didn't really have any huge purpose yet. For the writing, I think I'm going to give it a 7.5. In the beginning, I did struggle a little bit with the writing. We were doing a lot of world building and dialogue and conversation between characters, which in turn made the dialogue feel very, very clunky and unnatural, because these weren't conversations that the characters would typically be having. It was a way to introduce the reader to the world, not a natural flow. So I did struggle a little bit with that, especially in the beginning, a little bit with like some choppy sentences and weird flow in the very beginning. But as we moved through the book, Alec Hudson really did find his stride, and I thought that most of that went away for me. Toward the end of the book, while he was trying to like put lots of stuff in the end to get the story to wrap up, he kind of, mostly at the end of chapters, I noticed it more at the end of chapters than anything else. Something would be happening and a character would be doing one thing and we would have a conflict. Chapter break, conflict would be resolved. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did we get from point A to point B? And I noticed that a lot more toward the end. Like I said, I think he was trying to cram everything in at the end in a way that made sense to wrap it up for the next story, but had spent a large chunk of the book on the setup and was running out of room, is kind of what it felt like in some of those moments. It didn't really bother me that much, to be honest. It was noticeable, but it didn't bother me. Like, I still had a good time. And so I think I'm going to give the enjoyment an 8.5. I had a solid, fun time with this book. I think that if you are a fantasy reader that loves a really cool world and doesn't need super in-depth characters, then this is going to be a book that could really, really work for you, because the world was so interesting. But if you're somebody that needs either a huge, like, actual plot, or primarily somebody that really needs a lot of good character work, then this may not be the book for you. I had a great time with it. So the total rating for me was a 7.6, which is a solid 3-star read, a high 3-star read. Had a great time. Can't wait to read more from Alec Hudson in the future. I think that mine and Cassidy's top tier Patreon, the Indie Archive Book Club, is actually going to be doing the Crimson Queen series by him in the middle to latter half of the year, and I'm really excited to read that with everyone after having enjoyed Umbral Storm so much. So I don't have the book with me. It's actually in the office and I'm being lazy. I'm going to be starting Fire of the Forebears next, which is by L.A. Buck. This one is the one that I'm a little bit leery of. It's quite long, and it is the one that people haven't been enjoying as much. So far, the writing has been a little clunky for me, and there's definitely one point of view that I like more than another point of view, but overall, it's not terrible. I'm only like 11% in, so I'll let you know more when I've gotten a little bit more read, but my sprint's about to end, so I should shut up. I've been talking for 7 minutes. Hey guys, just popping in to say that I am now about 50% of the way through Fires of the Forebears, and so far I don't really have a lot of strong feelings about it. I don't think anything drastically different than when I talked to you guys before. This is an epic fantasy story. We do have 2 different points of view. I'm finding that a lot of the side characters, I'm having a hard time remembering who they are or what they do. The 2 main characters I have a really good grasp on, but the side characters I just don't feel like are super fleshed out. They could all be kind of interchangeable and solving and doing all the same things. This book is just one that while I'm reading it, I'm having a good time. It's fun. I'm enjoying it. But then when I put it down, either I don't want to pick it back up, or I pick it back up and I'm like, wait, I don't even remember what was going on up to this point. So unfortunately, it is a quite forgettable book, and I hate that because I think that it has the bones to be something good, but unfortunately the way that it is written is just not sticking with me. The characters are not standing out to me. The magic is not standing out to me. And as of right now, I don't really understand why we have talking animals. They're just kind of gimmicky and slightly corny. But anyway, I'm gonna definitely try to finish that soon. I feel like it's taking me absolutely forever to read, but I need to move on and get on to Tethered Spirits and Mysterious Ways. So hopefully I can get on some sprints tonight and get a decent bit of that done. I did have to go be social last night. We had a friend's birthday party to go to, so between that and spending some time with my grandmother, I just haven't been home as much as I would have wanted to this weekend. But I'm home now. I'm doing laundry. I'm trying to get the house clean, and hopefully I can sit down on the couch and read here in the future. That's the problem with a lot of these later books is they don't have audiobooks, and so I can't just pop them in and do other things, and I feel like that's part of the reason that I'm being slowed down a little bit. Anyway, that was a lot of things that you didn't really need to know. I will check back in with you guys once I'm done, and hopefully when I have a little bit more to say about the next book that I'm going to be picking up, probably Tethered Spirits. Hey everybody, so it is 8 p.m. and I have finally finished Fires of the Forebears. This is a classic fantasy that is following two young people. One is the prince of a kingdom dealing with a rebellion, and the other is not really a part of the rebellion, but lives in a world where their religion is a lot more part of her life, for lack of a better way to put it, and they're having to deal with being on two sides of this essentially rebellion after a certain group of people that have magic was thought to have killed the queen. I wanted to really enjoy this book, and I just preface by saying I did not hate it, but there were a lot of problems for me that I had a hard time getting over. It was just very forgettable. Like, I would put the book down and be fine while I was reading it, and then a day would pass and I would go to pick it back up and I would be like, wait, what was happening? What were we doing? What were the characters doing? Like, I don't remember what was going on. And there would be less than 24 hours in between picking this up, putting it down, and picking it back up again. And I just felt like that was a problem, first of all. The writing was not spectacular. I don't think that it was absolutely terrible. I was expecting it to be really bad because everybody had talked about how terrible the writing was. And I mean, it wasn't great, but it did improve. And I think that the writing was a little bit clunky, a little bit stilted, and a lot of, because the world building was done in dialogue, which you guys know how much I absolutely love. And the characters were just pretty forgettable. So anyway, we'll go into that in more depth. Let's go through my ratings. For characters, I think I'm going to have to give it a 5. I just felt like the characters were very cookie cutter. There was not a lot of depth to them. There was not a lot of just distinction in their personalities. The two main characters, I could see the personalities behind, but when we were talking about the side characters, half of them I couldn't tell you their names, and I couldn't tell you what role they played in the story. We had one guy, Saren, I think was his name, that was like one of the driving forces of a side character. We had a centaur that was pretty rememberable, and then we had like the friend that was semi-rememberable, but again, it took a while for me to be like, oh yeah, that was his name. You know, even when you would read it and you would know, but you wouldn't know, it took a while. So, and there were other characters that I still couldn't tell you like what their purpose was for the plot. So I think I'm going to have to give characters a 5. For plot, I'm going to give it a 6, and this is mostly because of how forgettable everything was. The plot was fine. It was mediocre. There was not anything inherently wrong with it. It's an adventure story, a classical rebellion. And I could probably honestly give this one more like a 6.5 if I'm being completely straight, because it wasn't bad. It was just extremely forgettable and extremely basic. And again, I think Cassidy had said this book has the bones to be something good, and I agree with that. I think that this has a really good idea and concept. It's not anything new or groundbreaking, but it's a lot of fun. The execution just did not work super well for me. That leads us into the world building. I'm going to have to give the world building a 5. I think that it was extremely mediocre at best, and it did not work for me. We had talking animals that served absolutely no purpose. They were there just to give a little spice to the world, and that irritated me. You're in a world where there are centaurs, yet the characters act shocked that when she comes upon a centaur, which is not very hard for her to do, might I add. So I'm just like, I don't know why that was such a big revelation, and I just felt like a lot of the sword lore and mythology wasn't super well explained, and the magic system behind the characters that could actually do magic just wasn't. I mean, like, briefly they would say that the essence does what it wants and you can't bend it to your will or something bad happens. And I'm like, okay, give me more of that, tell me more about it. And they just never did. And so I got very frustrated by just constantly wanting more from it, and it just kept glossing over everything. And I mean, this book is not short. It is 500 pages long. Now, granted, the writing is really big, but there was plenty of time for that. I'm not really sure what they managed to do for 500 pages, to be completely honest with you. We're gonna let Ollie finish drinking real quick, 'cause that's quite loud. Okay. Then we go on to the writing, which I'm going to give a 6.5. If you had asked me at the beginning of the book, I probably would have given it a 4, but I do think that it did improve a little bit as we moved through the story. The dialogue was extremely clunky, and that was a problem, but it started to flow a little bit better and stop being so like, somebody did this, and then they did this, and then they did that, and somebody said this. It did start to flow a little bit better, but it wasn't spectacular. I don't think that it was anything great. I think it was a little bit better than just completely meh. So we'll do probably a 6 or a 6.5 on that. I haven't fully decided yet. And then enjoyment, I'm going to have to give it a 5. It was fine. Like, it wasn't something I hated. It wasn't something that I really enjoyed. It was just kind of straight in the middle meh for me. And that's because of how forgettable it was. And that's sad because this is a type of story that I could really enjoy, but I just could not ever really get engaged with it, and so straight across the board, just meh. So for the total score on this one, it is a 5.6, and that is not the lowest one I've given so far, but unfortunately it is the second lowest that I've given so far, which sucks, but anyway. Now that I am done with that, I need to move on to... I think I'm going to do Tethered Spirits next. This is my next most anticipated that I have left. It's this and Mysterious Ways, and I'm not really wanting to read Mysterious Ways. So I figured I would break up the two that I was kind of like meh about with this one. I've heard it is a quick read. It is, I think, a YA, so it reads pretty fast. It's about a guy who has an unknown past and he's trying to recover his lost memories. And then we have a girl that has magical abilities and is bonded with a spirit. And then we have another that is a refugee that is in pursuit of the two, hoping that the Amar's curse can help save her brother from a fatal illness. So, sounds a little questy. I'm excited for it. I think it'll be at least fun. I don't know if I'm going to start that tonight though, because honestly, today at work was tiring. I think it's just that time of year where I'm a little burnt out. Like, we had our holidays and then we've been working nonstop since the holidays, and I just need a little bit of a break. And the pollen is disgusting. I mean, it is like the first week of March and there is pollen everywhere. Welcome to Alabama. So I think it's supposed to rain today, tomorrow, and get a little colder. So maybe it'll really confuse the trees and they'll just stop producing pollen. That would be great. But anyway, I guess I'm going to get to reading Tethered Spirits. I really hope it doesn't take me as long as Fires of the Forebears did. But I will check back in with you guys probably about halfway through that, give you my initial first impressions, maybe a little bit better synopsis, and fingers crossed that it goes better for me than Fires did. Okay guys, so I needed to come on and give you an update. Pardon the kind of snotty sound. I've been sick for the last couple of days and I'm halfway through Tethered Spirits, and so I needed to update you regardless of the fact that I sound snotty. Actually don't feel too bad, but I sound worse than I feel. So anyway, hopefully you guys can understand me in this clip, but I'm about halfway through Tethered Spirits and I'm still enjoying it, but I am starting to get a little bit bored. What I'm finding is that this is a very repetitive story. We will be with the characters and they find out some information, get directed to a person, go to person. Person tells them information to go to a different person. They leave, they find the different person, they get information, they find somebody different. And it's just kind of repeat, repeat, repeat. And so I'm wanting that formula to switch up a little bit. I am finding it to be incredibly convenient. Like, the people that they are meeting just happen to know exactly who they need to go see next in order to help break Amar's curse. And it's like, okay, it wouldn't be that easy. And they've had to go through a couple of different people, but everyone has magically known where to take them. And it's like in the hometowns of the characters that we're with, so they always have food and supplies. And I don't know, it's a little too convenient for me and it's getting kind of frustrating. I want them to hit a wall somewhere. I will say that the characters are not bad, but I do find them very surface level. Their entire personality is whatever conflict they're currently having. What is her name? The one that is like going after them, the Tarja that's going after them, her entire personality is saving her brother and like on this quest. And then Kelsia, is that how you say her name? I may be completely messing that up. But but her entire personality is this thing that happened to her when she was 14 and now she won't do magic again. And Amar's entire personality is this curse that he's got going on, and there's just not a lot of depth to them. I just want them to be more nuanced. Kelsari was like had this big huge thing looming over her head. She wouldn't do magic to the point where she let someone die. Then we go back to her hometown and it is resolved really, really quickly. And that was quite frustrating, honestly, because I was like, okay, this was a big deal. And now all of a sudden it's no deal anymore. And suddenly she's okay to do everything that she said she wasn't going to do before. I wanted a little bit more from it. I know that I'm sounding super critical about this book and I don't dislike it, but I do want there to be a little bit more nuance, a little bit more depth to everything overall. I find the magic system to be really intriguing. I do want to know more about that. They keep talking about the powers and the fact that you can give up half your life to become magical if you weren't already magical, and it's just kind of all dripped in. And I want more of that. Unfortunately, with the direction that this book is currently going, I don't get the impression that we're going to get a lot more world building, which kind of stinks because I think it's really, really cool. Either way, I'm not hating my life reading it or anything like that. I do think that it is entertaining. It's not horribly written or anything like that. It's just very surface level. So I think that that's all I have to say on this one. I'll check back in when I finish it. I would love to finish it tonight, and I don't know if I'm gonna finish it tonight, but I'm gonna try. Kaylee has sprints tonight. She went for forever and a million years last night, so I don't know if she's gonna go for long tonight, but I'm going to join her when I'm done with dinner and hopefully get some reading done. Okay, everybody, so let's talk my second to last SPFBO book. Can you believe it? Tethered Spirits by T.A. Hernandez. So you guys have already heard me talk about this book a pretty good bit, and honestly, my feelings haven't really changed a whole heck of a lot. I still think that it was enjoyable. There just wasn't a lot of depth or nuance to it, so I guess I don't really have a whole lot more to say. So let's just go through my ratings for this, and I think I can be a little more eloquent in the ratings part of it. For the characters, I'm gonna give it a 5. Again, I just felt like the characters didn't really have a lot of depth to them. What depth was intended to be there was very skimmed over and just kind of briefly mentioned and then conflict resolved. And then other parts of the character development were just thrown in at the end to keep the plot moving. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where was the lead up to all of this? Where was the hints here and there that this is what was going on? It was just like, okay, well, here was somebody and now all of a sudden they're this person. And I didn't really love that. I wouldn't call them inherently bad characters, but they just weren't great either. So that one I think is gonna get a 5. For the plot, I think I'm gonna give it a 6. It was better than average, but still just not my favorite. It was very much so a quest type story, and the way that everything wrapped up at the end, while not unexpected, I just wish we had gotten, again, a little bit more depth to it. And then we had the Alita point of view that just really didn't seem to matter at all until the very, very end. And it's like we threw that in at the last second. So again, I just kind of wish that there had been a little bit more, I don't know, just a little bit more depth to it. Next, we have world building. I'm gonna give this one a 6.5. I don't think it was bad, but again, I wanted more depth to it. That's just gonna kind of be the overarching theme of all of my thoughts for this book, is it needed more depth. The world building was interesting. I liked the discussion of Batarja and how you can be somebody that had magic, but when you die, your spirit can get attached to someone else and give them magic and it keeps you alive. I really liked the discussions of how powerful you were, transitioned into what kind of spirit Tarja you could be. I thought that was interesting, but I would have liked some more distinction between what was going on and the magic system and how that worked. At a couple of points, it tells you that you have to give up like half of your life in order to be bonded to one of these spirits, and I'm like, okay, why? I guess that's the logic-driven reader in me. I just wanted more explanation to it. So it's 6.5, interesting, not great, not bad. Writing, I'm gonna give a 7. Again, I think that it was fine. It wasn't groundbreaking, but I didn't, dislike reading it. I didn't find it hard to follow. I didn't find it overly clunky or not making sense. So I think the writing was decent. And then for enjoyment, I also think I'm probably going to give it a 7. I had a decent time with this book, and I could see myself potentially reading the sequel just to see how the author improves in the writing and in character development and things like that. And I know that it comes out relatively soon, so I might give it a try because I was interested enough to enjoy reading it and want to continue. I didn't at any point want to DNF it. Not that I could DNF it for this anyway. That's one of our rules, but I'd never wanted to. So the overall score then comes out at a 6.3, which is a 3-star. It was fine. It was entertaining. That's everything on this one. And next up and last up is Mysterious Ways. I saved one of the shortest ones for last because I just wanted to end like strong, quickly, when I was reading these at the last minute, which I am doing. I'm not sure. I've not really read a whole lot of this one yet. My first impressions of the first like 5% are, I'm not gonna like the writing style. It is very punchy, like 3-word sentence, but then we have this huge run-on sentence and the dialogue just feels very, very unnatural to me at this point. We'll see if that improves. Not really sure that it's going to based off of what I've heard from other reviewers, but I have hopes. Maria enjoyed it. She found it funny, so we'll see what I end up thinking as far as that goes. So I guess that's everything that I wanted to talk to you guys about. But anyway, hopefully for the next clip, I'll be far enough away from the snot that I won't sound so stuffy. I'm not sure if that's gonna happen, but we will see. And I will let you guys know when I'm probably about halfway through Mysterious Ways. I've got sprints tonight, so I'm hoping to make some decent progress, but I'm also the queen of procrastination when it comes to sprints. So we'll see how far I get, and I'll check in with you guys once I do. Okay guys, so I have now finished Mysterious Ways by Abby Evans, and honestly, I don't have a whole lot more to update you guys on thoughts-wise than I did before. It was generally fine, but I just did not particularly love my time with it. It was trying a little bit too hard to be quirky and, I don't know, hip is not a good word, that makes me sound old, but it just never really fully caught on for me. The characters never did it for me. The humor just didn't work in my opinion. I just felt like it was trying too hard the whole time while also remaining extremely surface level, and so it didn't work for me. But let's quickly go through my individual ratings for this one. So for characters, I think I'm going to give it a 4. They weren't inherently terrible, but they were just very bland, very basic. None of them had a whole lot of personality or backstory. There was not a lot of time spent developing these characters' past histories and how they were and who they were as a person. It was very much so they were there to serve a purpose and nothing else. There was not anything more to them. Primarily, even our main character, Isabella, I was expecting her to be the strong female character, and in all actuality, she really wasn't. And Ceres, I was expecting to be a lot more fun and quirky. She was, but again, very surface level. Theo was just never had a whole lot of depth to him at all. I think Cassidy pointed out at one point, they were like, oh, well, you just don't know the real him. And it's like, yeah, because you never showed the reader any of that. So that is kind of frustrating there. I'm gonna give that a 4. For plot, I'm gonna give it a 5.5. At the beginning, that we had this murder mystery plot, and then there was a little bit of like our main character trying to figure out where she went wrong when sending people down to the underworld, but we just kind of ran all over the place. There wasn't a whole lot of direction. The pacing was not that great for me. I didn't feel like there was any foreshadowing. So while it was not inherently terrible, I do think it was extremely mediocre. So I'm gonna give that one a 5.5. For world building, I'm gonna give it a 6. I don't think, again, that it was terrible, but I do wish that we had gotten a little bit more. I think I told you guys earlier that I wanted a lot more world building. About 10 pages after I said that, we did get more world building than we had previously gotten. So I did like the underworld and the thought processes of the demons and them having their own languages and the different levels of hell and there being like sisters who each had different control over the realms. All of that was really cool, but we didn't get much of it. And so it just, again, was very basic surface level for me. The writing, I'm gonna give a 5. I did not like the writing style. I felt like everything was extremely clunky, extremely repetitive. You know how whenever you learn about creative writing or essay writing, whatever grade that was for you, you're kind of told, okay, when you are talking about a character or talking about a person, kind of switch up what you're calling them every once in a while so that things start to flow and it's not the proper noun over and over and over again. Somebody forgot to tell Abby Evans that. Because the word chief, I think Rachel mentioned it, and maybe that's why I noticed it as much as I did, was just used constantly a lot of times when they were talking to each other. And it was just one of the instances where I was like, this writing is just too clunky for me. But at the same time, it didn't just not make sense or like horrible flow, super choppy run-on sentences, nothing like that. So I did end up giving that a 5. And then for enjoyment, I think I'm also going to give it a 5. It was very middle of the road for me. I didn't necessarily want to DNF it, but I wasn't really enjoying my time with it either. So middle of the road, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it. So this comes out to a 5.1, which is a 2-star. I'm sad that we're ending on this kind of note, but here we are. So with that being said, I do want to go grab all of the books and show you guys what the differences looked like between my predictions versus where we ended up in the end, and we'll wrap up this video. Okay, so bear with me. These are indie and extremely heavy, but just going from top to bottom, 10th place, we had Scales and Sensibilities, which I currently do not have anymore, on the bottom in 10th place, followed by Small Miracles, then Mysterious Ways, then Miss Percy's, then A Song for the Void, then The Cruel Gods, then Fires of the Forebears, Umbral Storm, Tethered Spirits, and Touch of Light on the top. So that was my predictions, how I thought that I was going to feel in the end, how I thought I was going to rank everything. So let me shift this around again and I'll show you what my ratings actually ended up being. And here's what everything looked like in the end. A lot of these ended up having very, very similar scores. And so the ones kind of in the middle, all about the same. At the bottom, we had Song for the Void at 4.6. That was by far my lowest. Then we had Mysterious Ways at a 5.1, followed by Fires of the Forebears at 5.6, and then Miss Percy's Pocket Guide at 6.4, Tethered Spirits also at 6.4, and Scales and Sensibilities at a 6.4. In my mind, none of these match up together though, so we're gonna rank these on enjoyment here in just a minute, and you're gonna see what the differences are between my objective ratings and my enjoyment ratings, because I feel like it's gonna look pretty different. And then we had Small Miracles coming in at a 7.4, 13th Hour at a 7.6, Umbral Storm also at a 7.7, and then A Touch of Light, by far the highest, at an 8.3. So now, let me switch these on one more time and I'll show you guys what they looked like as far as my enjoyment rating goes. So not my objective SPFBO rating, but just my personal enjoyment. And last but not least, looking at them in ranking of enjoyment, it really did not change a whole lot. There were definitely some that objectively were much better than I enjoyed them, just because they're not my preferred type of book. And then there are others that are just kind of up my alley and it ended up staying about the same. So at the, at the bottom, we again have Song for the Void. This just was not a fantasy, and that really hurt it for sure. Then we have Miss Percy. That book was not for me. It meandered around too much. It was a Regency style, which you're gonna see it being a commonality because right after Miss Percy's was Scales and Sensibilities on the bottom. I just don't like Regency, followed by Mysterious Ways, followed by Fires, followed by Tethered Spirits, then Small Miracles, then The 13th Hour, A Touch of Light, and Umbral Storm. These two are pretty much tied together. They both got 9s on the enjoyment scale for me, and I think that you could interchange the two. Had a great time with both of them. So yeah, that is my big old stack of books ranked from enjoyment, predictions, and my actual rating. So what won SPFBO for me? No one's surprised. It was absolutely A Touch of Light. I love this book. I really enjoyed the second book. However, I had a spectacular time with Umbral Storm. It's not nearly as technically strong as A Touch of Light, but I just had so much fun with it and I cannot wait to read the sequel. I also will be picking up the sequel to The 13th Hour or The Cruel Gods because I actually own it. It was gifted to me by Ash, so I will be picking that up. Small Miracles, I think, was just a technically good book. It was one that a lot of our group enjoyed, and I can definitely see why. It's just a little too cozy for my taste, and I like a much bigger scope, but I can see why people loved this book so much. Scales and Sensibility, I think a lot of people had a really good time with. It just was not my preferred book, again, because of the Regency style romance. It was way too over the top for me, and I had a hard time getting engaged in the story because I was just so distracted by how dramatic it was at all times. So not really the book's fault, that's more of a me thing. Tethered Spirits, I had a good time with. I will probably read the sequel, but I do have a lot of problems with this book and I do feel like it needed a lot of polishing and a lot of editing, but I'm curious to see how she improves with the second one. Miss Percy, just had a lot not going for it. I mean, the cover was going for it, but unfortunately this one was way too slow for me. The main character likes to talk way too much about poor pitiful her without actually communicating with anyone. It was very Regency, and I don't know how you managed to make dragons boring, but somehow, unfortunately for me, it was. If you're a cozy fantasy, you love Regency, you want an older main character, then this could be your kind of thing, but it just wasn't mine. And then for Fires of the Forebears, this is definitely a classic fantasy. For me, it was just very forgettable. I don't think it was an inherently bad book, but it was just too forgettable. I can tell you about the plot and the characters. I just read it, but I don't think that it's going to be something that sticks with me at all. Unfortunately, this was supposed to be a continuation, but ends up being a standalone because the author has since passed away. I do think that if you're curious about this, you can read it as a standalone. I mean, it's quite chunky and it wraps up everything relatively well. Then we have Mysterious Ways, which I just did not enjoy, but at the same time, it was quick and it wasn't painful. It just wasn't a good time. And at the bottom of the stack was Song for the Void, which was a technically well-written book, and that's one of those where if you look at my writing score, the writing score is an 8 and everything else is like a 4 because it's not fantasy. It's much more of a historical fiction with cosmic horror elements rather than a fantasy. I think you could argue more for sci-fi than you could fantasy, but it was technically well written. It didn't belong in this competition, in my opinion, and it was very slow and quite boring. So anyway, that wraps up my SPFBO Cassidy's version. I hope you guys enjoyed these sets of vlogs. I had a great time in doing them. Who knows, maybe I'll get a chance to do them again next year. It was a ton of fun. I definitely found some new series that I will probably be continuing, which is super exciting, and I'm really glad that I did it. So that wraps up everything. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of the SPFBO books and how do your rankings match up with my own. Thank you guys so very much for watching. If you just want to let me know that you were here, leave me a pencil emoji because why not? As always, links to my Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, and Goodreads are all in the description box down below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.